Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the safe space between us. I'm your host, Kieran, and today we have a lovely guest called Monique. Monique, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you for willing to come on to here today, and finally glad to meet you. So, Monique, before we start, and as it's today, it's all about you, not about me. So, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and then we get to your story.
Yeah, I am Monique Derouen. I am originally from Lake Charles, Louisiana in the States and moved up to a beautiful area called Glenwood Springs, Colorado in 2018 to start a new journey up here and just changing all the ways that I was taught to live and doing things a little differently now.
Lovely. Obviously, I've read what you do now, and it's very exciting to talk about what you do now. Eventually, when we get to your story, so just start from us from the start of obviously mental health, etc., to get to where you are now. How did it all begin for you, like from childhood and upbringing?
Yeah, so um, I was born an only child, and my parents divorced when I was very young, which led to them remarrying and bringing in multiple children into their new marriages. They had so I had lots of stepsisters and brothers that started accumulating over the years. My parents adopted children and took on family members that needed to be raised and taken care of. But in that, a lot of things happened. A lot of things got lost. Our identities changed, and the way we did life was a little different. And there were moments of trauma throughout
Yeah,
all of our lives, and they impact us, in the long term. And if we don't have the tools and the resources to change the way that we interpret this trauma in our body and our nervous systems, then our mental health is often impacted on a deep level, which is what I found.
that's brilliant. So when obviously you mentioned that your upbringing and personnel change of identity and stuff like that. As a child, obviously, it's hard to understand what mental health is and if you're going through depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. Tell me when the moment when you realised something was going on with yourself.
Yeah. Around 16 years old, I started passing out and having seizures. And I knew that something was not correct with my mental stability, my nervous system, but I didn't really have the resources to investigate it. I went through, doctors and the normal Western medicine tools and found a little relief with things, but it continued through many, many years of my life. And I think the last episode I had was um, around 2016 or 2018. And, I haven't had any issues since, but there was something that was building up inside.
No, I bet. And how did you deal with that at the moment? Obviously, with the seizures and stuff, how did you deal with the stress of that, etc.? Did you seek support, or what was your circle like, close circle?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to regulate stress because that's what we understood it as. Whenever I got really stressed, my blood pressure would drop, I would pass out, I would have seizures, and often I would hit my head or things which created head injuries and other issues in my brain and my body. Um, so I was just trying to figure out how to stay stress free, which is kind of a crazy thought now that I think about it because humans get stressed, right? So it's
Yeah.
part of who we are.
And what kind of tools helped you, like, and what help you now?
Yeah. So one of the main things that I've utilized over the years is meditation. And I was actually talking about it earlier today with somebody else, but it's just short spurts of trying to calm the mind, realizing that life is going to happen and that, the kids are going to need to get fed, the bills are going to be due, I'm going to have to go to work, the weather's going to happen, there's going to be a flat tire once in a while. That's just part of life. But being able to identify, is this really detrimental? Is this a fire? Is this truly a problem? And I often relate this to animals. Animals don't have a prefrontal cortex, so they don't start thinking about all the things like humans do. But they know what's real danger. They know when they don't have food, they need to find food. They know when they need water or shelter. They know not to run into the fire or the flood or the tsunami, right? But as humans, we often turn into those things and kind of hit it face first instead of asking ourselves, like, are these things really a problem? Or are these really I don't want to say real things because everything in life is real, obviously. I don't want to make it like that. But when the credit card bill is due, is that really a problem, or is making sure that you have food at night more important?
Yeah.
And really
Okay.
being able to kind of regulate that information.
Nice, brilliant. Yeah, I totally understand that, and I get that. And obviously, before we get to what you do now, etc., how do you, like, obviously life can bring ups and downs and stuff like that. Apart from when you were 16, is there anything that hit you and made you get to where you are as well, apart from the change of identity of other people and stuff and the upbringing?
Yeah, absolutely. I like many people, I fell in love very young and started a relationship that was far from perfect, but I thought it was perfect at the time, and ended up being in a very abusive relationship. So I left at 22 with two toddlers and went into another state and stayed there for a while, until life made more plans for me and moved me back into the area where my family was. And there was kind of a series of events that occurred from there. I raising two toddlers on my own. We lived in Louisiana, so there's lots of hurricanes in the area. One really big storm in 2005 took out my home completely. We lost everything. Again, starting over from scratch with nothing. So it was kind of this theme in my life that I'd lose everything somehow, through divorce, through hurricanes, through life, and then I'd have to kind of build it all back up. And it taught me a lot about being resilient with certain things and putting into perspective what really mattered, and releasing a lot of the things that just didn't really matter in my life anymore.
No, I get you, and obviously credit to yourself to go through so many stumbling blocks, and that's what I treat life as. We go through certain things to get to where we are. Basically, that's the way I look at it. So you just quickly going back to your was abusive relationship and that. Just if talk to us what you're happy to talk about, but obviously I'm guessing you used the word abusive. How long did that go on for, and how did you cope with that?
Yeah. So I was with him for 6 years, and you know, a, for a while I didn't even understand what was happening was abuse. You kind of you kind of become numb to certain things. You think that things are just certain types of behavior and it's okay, and you kind of brush it under the rug and make excuses. And I really wanted my marriage to work. I was young, and I was just certain that marriage was forever and that we could figure this out. But then there was a point where it just wasn't going to work anymore. And I was actually afraid for my children, which was much more than being afraid for myself. And so when I considered them being in the picture, I just decided it wasn't negotiable anymore. And I woke up one day and it had went too far. And I decided that was the day that I was going to leave. And I did. I packed a bag and went on about my way. And he was actually arrested. So we got formal charges. But um, a lot of times you don't even realize it's going on because you're
Yeah.
so accustomed to the behavior. And that's what I see now, that part of myself that was so young and just didn't really know, and wanted this idea, this picture perfect marriage to work. And it really wasn't going to.
Did you obviously as things happen like in life, like with me, for example, trauma and stuff like will come up later in my life and stuff. How did you cope with it? Obviously with the abuse you went through.
Yeah. It definitely created an impact through the majority of my life. Relationships were very hard for me. It was very hard to trust other people, to believe that they were going to be solid relationships, friendships, everything, because everything that I knew kind of got turned upside down in one day. The moment where you decide you're going to do it different, you kind of let go of everything
Yeah.
you had. And so it was a lot of learning to trust again, which made me have to learn to trust myself, which I wasn't sure how to do. I had never been taught those types of things. It was just kind of go with the flow, whatever happens, happens. And now I had to hold myself accountable, not only for myself, but for my children.
Obviously, your children were quite young when you went through all that. Do they did they go remember things? Did they go through some parts of remembering what happened at home?
There are bits and pieces. My daughter's a little bit older. They were 2 and 4 when I left.
Uh,
So she has memories and spurts of, things getting broken around the house and some anger, yelling, things like that. Um, they never actually witnessed any abuse, like physical abuse, but they still knew it would happen. They were very aware, and children are very sensitive to things. So I believe it probably impacted them a lot more than what I understood in the past. Now that I'm older and they're older and we have a very honest relationship, and I've studied mental health in depth at this point, I can really see where some of the things may have impacted them, trauma wise
mm.
in their adult lives now.
No, and I get that, and I totally get that, and that's what my worrying thing is for kids out there. I'm no angel. I've done silly things, hence what I do now. I've tried to turn my life around, and obviously, I've been looking into, like you said, you looked into mental health and how it can affect the youngers and stuff like that. So, credit to you. So let's talk about now where you're. Relationship wise, in a new relationship.
Yes, I've been with my current husband now for 18 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. And it's not always sunshine and roses, but it's definitely different. And I've learned a lot from that first, marriage that I don't want to repeat again. And communication and making agreements is very different now.
No, I love that, love that. And during your 18 years with your current husband, what's the mental health for you and your family? How has it been?
Yeah. I went through quite a struggle for a long time. I started using drugs and medications and alcohol for a while, just trying not to feel, really not understanding trauma and anxiety and the way that my body was reacting to life in my past history. And so I tried all these different things, and at some point I realized it wasn't really working and I was just numbing out. So I decided to come off of everything that I was using, taking medication, drinking, things like that. And it was quite a journey to get here. But what I found was if I could begin to love myself, which I know sounds so cliche, but if I could begin to love myself, then I could extend that to other people. And if I could open myself up, then I could be open in my relationship with my husband and my children and my parents. And so it was beginning to bond and trust people in a way that I had never been exposed to before.
No, and I get that. But at least I love your honesty as well. So just because I kind of relate to the drink and drugs thing, and that's the kind of road I went down to, and obviously now I've changed. What kind of, not that it really matters, but what kind of, because for listeners, there might be someone using that kind of drug. What kind of drug was you using and taking on a regular basis?
I mean, you name the drug, I've probably done it.
Right,
It's
okay.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have one that I just loved. It was I didn't wanna feel, so whatever was around. So if it was a bottle of wine, a six-pack of beer, if it was speed, if it were prescriptions, I tried it, I did it because
Mm,
I just didn't want to feel what I felt, which now I look at it as emptiness. I was sad, I was empty, and I didn't know what to do with that confusion, those emotions.
yeah.
I didn't know how to process them. So if I could just deflect from what I was experiencing, um, it felt better, even
Did
feeling
you Did you feel like, because with me, I felt embarrassed and ashamed when I finally realised, oh my God, what am I doing? And this took months for me to wake up. Did you feel that, or did you just feel a bit of relief that
yeah.
you now needed help?
My family tried to get me help. They could see that I was struggling. They could see that I was really in a bad space. My mother checked me into a mental hospital at one point in time. They held me against my will for a while and tried to work with me. And it it wasn't that beneficial. I didn't really get any help from it, unfortunately. I kind of went back into the same rotation of life that I was living before I went in. I tried many different medications and community support groups, and I tried NA and AA and all the things, because there was a point where I realized that my children were going to suffer if I
Yeah.
did not change my life. And it took me a little while to realize that, but when that kind of hit me in the face, it was very raw and it was very painful and embarrassing. And I knew that I could not put them through anything else as it being my fault. I was not going to be the one that was going to hurt them more. And so I made a very active choice. One night I just decided I am no longer going to be the person who does drugs. And I went outside and I started a fire, and I threw everything that I had in my possession into that fire. All of my my tools and my paraphernalia and every drug that I had in my house at that time. And I remember just sitting in my bedroom, and I was alone at that point, and I thought, oh my goodness, what happens in the morning when I wake up with no drugs,
Yeah.
And it was very scary.
No, I bet. But well done on that. And I just want to say to all the listeners who are listening to this now, or listening to this tomorrow, or next week, or next month, is, for example, you look at Monique and myself. We both opened that said we took drugs. I just want to remind people that just because you take drugs, sometimes not that it's the right answer, and I don't agree with it's the right answer. But as Monique said, I've said it before. It's just either you felt alone or emptiness, and you're trying to get rid of that emptiness. And yes, it's not the right answer, but it comes back to break the stigma, break the silence, because sometimes you feel alone, you feel empty, and that's the easy answer sometimes. But the whole point of the safe space between us is to break that stigma, to make sure you don't go down that route and have a space to talk. So I appreciate Monique's honesty here. So thank you so far. So obviously you've come through all that. You've got rid of all those drugs. What happened next in your life leading up to what you do now?
Mhm. Yeah. So I was off of everything for a while, and I was still struggling a lot with mental health. I was having anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and um, really still not wanting to feel a lot, but doing the best I could with what I had in front of me. So I got really busy. I kind of occupied my time. I started, over exercising and I found addiction in other things, right? And some things, are better than others, but at the same time, it was still me trying not to feel. And fast forward several years, I started having a lot of chronic pain. I started really struggling with my physical body. I had gained a lot of weight. I was having a lot of ailments and diagnoses that were costing me time and money and doctor's appointments. And um, I was on medication at the time, prescription medication. And so I wanted to figure out how to heal my body and my nervous system in a natural and holistic way, which led me into the next stage of my life, where I began to look for holistic certifications, and I became a yoga instructor and a movement specialist. And then I went to massage school and started kind of digging into the brain and the nervous system. And I started exploring neurobiology and really understanding how trauma affects the brain, and how that's where we sense what we're thinking and feeling and all the things. And so, if I could begin to separate the past experiences of my life from who I was now and then who I wanted to be, and kind of see them as three separate places rather than this is just me with all the garbage and the drama and the trash and the pain and the story, um, I could begin to have a little bit of compassion for 16-year-old Monique and 20-year-old Monique and 25-year-old Monique. And I really began to see at those moments that the resources that I needed were not available to me. And I made choices that, created consequences. But I also had to give myself a lot of grace and compassion for who I was and what I had been exposed to and where I was in life and all of the things that I was experiencing. And that opened up a whole different part of who I am now.
No, that's great. So just quickly going back, because you've mentioned trauma and how it works with the brain and stuff like that. So, for example, I've gone through trauma. Just talk to us a little bit about what you've learned and etc. about that kind of subject first.
Yeah, absolutely. So my understanding of trauma is there is an experience, a circumstance, a situation, and especially in children, but adults as well. Um, you're put into a space and you don't know how to properly feel the emotions that are coming through the body. And oftentimes we're told what to feel or what not to feel.
Hmm.
You should be ashamed, you should feel guilty, don't cry, don't do that. And I think it's very innocent because it's just what the authority knows or the parents know or the whoever's above us knows. But when you don't have a prefrontal cortex and you're told not to feel or to stop crying or to process something alone, and you don't actually have those resources available to understand, so you're basically dealing with an unfelt perception. So there's a perception of what's happening in your mind, and then you're told to stop. Don't do that, you're not allowed to. And so it cuts away the potential to actually allow the emotion to move through the body and go on about its way. So we kind of push it down. And over time, these things get kind of pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. Well, then there's no room left for it. And there's an explosion or it's full. And so if you can imagine, I call the body a storage locker. And from the time we're born, we're kind of storing all these experiences inside, but we've never been taught how to feel them. And then at some point, the storage locker doesn't want to close anymore.
Yeah.
And so there is this unfelt perception, um, there's a child or an adult that doesn't know what to do with the feelings and the emotions. And I believe that's actually trauma. I don't know that the incident itself is trauma because a lot of people experience things and they feel different ways about it, right? Some people get
Yeah.
in a car wreck, it doesn't bother them. Some people get in a car wreck, they never want to drive again, you know? And so I don't think it's the car wreck. But I think it's being left there without knowing what to do with the way you feel or what you're thinking after the car wreck.
Right. Okay. I kind of get it. Yeah. So with me, for example, my trauma comes up. I think it's a lot of the images come up in the evening. So I'm guessing that happens a lot with everyone 'cause it's when it's quiet and your mind's overthinking. What would your recommendation be, or to people like myself or anyone out there suffering with that kind of trauma? How would you cope with that?
Yeah. I would say find a practice. Find a practice that you can implement every single day. So, the way that the brain works, if you think about it like this, if you got up in your car every morning, Monday through Friday, and you drive in 8 o'clock traffic, and it's always slow at this certain part of town because everybody's trying to move through, you're probably going to have a little bit of a reaction in that space, a little bit of emotional or physical response in your body. Like you might be a little annoyed, you might be a little short, you might be excited because you don't want to go to work. It might be something that keeps you away from work, right? So everybody's going to feel it a little differently. But on Saturday and Sunday at 8 o'clock, at that same time, you're likely going to feel a little bit of emotional disturbance. And that's because the brain has created a neural pathway. So it's basically a road that's there every single day at the same time. Some people have it with seasons, some people have it with days and times. Yours are more in the evening, right? So
Yeah.
I would first acknowledge what's going around me, what's going on in my brain around this time, or maybe 30 minutes to an hour before that time. You know, am I preparing for dinner? Is it busy in the house? Am I alone and separated from other people? Is it quiet? Does that bother me? Maybe just get some facts first. Like, what's actually happening 30 minutes to an hour before the body starts having this reaction or you start having these moments where you see things? And then what can you do instead, right? So you actually want to take a different action. For me, like I said, meditation is one of the simplest things. I have a mantra, I just repeat it, and as I repeat it for a few minutes, my brain kind of gets something to mess with and the thoughts kind of slow down. And if the brain can slow down long enough to get the body on board, then the body can actually create a new neural network or new pathway around what it is seeing and doing. And we can get a change. The thing is it's a consistent thing. So it's a practice just like anything else. You're going to build a muscle memory for it. So, what's something that you could do that maybe would take 3 to 5 minutes instead of what you're currently doing when these things are coming up?
Yeah.
And
See,
I'm
I,
gonna
I
start.
started. Sorry, I started doing breathing techniques. But I'll be honest, it was routine. And you listening to it, I've let myself down over the last week and a half. I haven't done it. And this is when it's got worse, this last week and a half. So tonight I'm going to start again. But again, I've got to be committed to it. And I was committed to it morning and evening. But for some reason, the last week and a half, I've not bothered. And now it's got worse, like evenings, my moods, etc. But so I totally understand and respect that. So thank you for putting that in my head. Because I'm beating myself up now. I was thinking, why haven't I kept to the routine?
Well, you don't know until you don't know. When you
Mm,
keep doing something and you can see what it does, you're like, "Oh, yeah, that worked well. I should go back to that." But we're human. We get busy. We have lives. I would just recommend putting it in a calendar or having an alarm that kind of dings and lets you know, "Hey, it's time to do this." Until your body becomes in a complete cycle of doing it differently, you might just need a little reminder. And even as silly as it sounds, get a calendar, check the box. So you
yeah.
can actually look at it and see, okay, I've done this for 30 days straight. How do I feel? Give yourself an assessment, maybe journal about it. I feel good because it makes a lot of sense. I want to keep doing this. And kind of give your brain that little dopamine hit, that reward system so that it knows I want to do this instead of all of this.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to definitely do that. And calendar, alarms, everything. This is something that I know it helps. And in the last week and a half, I look back thinking, what have I changed? And it's the breathing technique that kind of I've really changed. And it's putting me in those thoughts of mind of like every night at the moment, just thinking about the past. Like totally. I'm going to try that. So obviously you do, so mind body coach and owner of Black Diamond Mind Bed and Butter Retreat Centre. Tell us a bit more about what you do and regarding the centre.
Yes. So I work with people to help them regulate their nervous system. If the nervous system is regulated, the body goes into homeostasis, the body does what it's designed to do, we live our best life. But we weren't taught how to regulate our nervous systems. So I actually have practices and techniques that help you bring the heart and the brain into cohesion and have this happy little family between the two spaces. And then you will live differently. You'll feel differently. I do this both in person at my home here. I have a room set up where I do in-person somatic trauma work as well as craniosacral therapy. I have an integrative specific massage that I do with my clients hands-on, and then I also do it online. So I have clients all over the world, and I also have a membership where I work with groups of people that do this work as well. And at the retreat center, I have a home here and it's a vacation rental and a retreat center. And I will do weekend retreats or 4-day retreats for clients or people that just want to come in and get some physical healing. And I actually teach them the techniques that I've used on myself and what I do with my one on one clients. They also get to experience the massage that I do with my clients. So healthy food, yoga, meditation, breath work, sound healing. We bring in so many different tools for them to use here. And then they get to kind of pick what works best for them and create a routine for at home. And then I kind of help hold them accountable for a little while to make sure that they're staying on the right path. Or we have that membership option that they can get into. So we do live events and online as well.
Okay, brilliant. So we can find you online. Obviously, I'll post all the links and everything for you on here. So you mentioned online, etc. So, say for example, I want to get involved. How do I do it?
Yeah. So you just reach out to me, contact me through social media. I'm on Monique Derouen, the Mind Body Coach. You can find me on any social media handle as that. I have my website for you as well. And just send me a message, call me. All my information's public. So get with me. Let's do an evaluation. Let's see where you are. And let me help you find a program or a path that would be right for you. Some people just need tools and resources. I have a free YouTube channel where I talk a lot about movement and meditation and somatics and mind body work. Some people need really deep, intense work with me, and they may pick to work with me 6 months to a year. Some of my clients have been with me for 2 and 3 years. Some of them just come into the membership and get the community and the support and the structure where they can really practice being who they are without the judgment. And that for me, I started out as there as a client because I needed that support. I needed a place to go and share and not be judged. And just like what you're doing here for people, the safe space, to be able to express my fears and my guilt and my self-judgment, and then have somebody help me work on that part of my brain so that I could use it in my benefit instead of against myself. And I think that was a big game changer for um, where I am now.
That's great. Yeah, and you're right. Like with a lot of people around the world, if they know there's no judgment, space with no judgment, and I know it sounds cliche, it's not just about a safe space between us. About what you do, what other people around the world do. Is there is places and spaces where you do not get judged, and you can feel comfortable, and that's why I love connecting with people like yourself around the world, knowing that there are people around the world doing their own little thing to help that. So credit to you as well. I see that you obviously chronic pain and stuff. I suffer a bit of chronic pain, and I know a few of our members suffer chronic pain. So just talk to us on what you do that can help with chronic.
Yeah. So first, understanding that pain is a physical sensation, but it is actually deciphered in the brain. So the brain tells us if it's a 1 or if it's a 10 or anything in between. It tells us if it feels like tension. It tells us if it feels like a sharpness or a stabbing or if it's a throbbing. Our brain actually comes in and communicates with the body and makes the sentence, right? And so what I do is I actually help people with the neuroplasticity of the brain. And so we go in and we look at how is the pain being identified? What are the fear points and triggers that do this, right? Is it picking up things? Is it bending a certain way? Is it sitting too long? Is it staring at the computer? And we work on the brain part of the triggers, and we remap the way that the brain is deciphering this. And long term, the results are that people don't have anxiety and chronic pain. I mean, they actually uh, it goes away. And I'm not going to say it doesn't come up because, again, life is real and we have
Mm.
stress and triggers are there, but you have the access points and the tools that you did not have before to use them in the moment and get that pain level back down. My one-on-one clients have private access to me, so they reach out to me in the middle of the week. They don't wait a whole week until we have another session. So that's one of the main selling points of what I do. So if you work with me for say 6 months and the first 2 or 3 months we're really working on the physical pain, well then the next 3 months you're kind of implementing all the tools that I've taught you. But it takes about 30 days to understand something, 30 days to undo it, and then 30 days to plug something else new in. So I look at about a 100-day cycle is where we're really working on the brain, how it's feeling the pain in the body, and understanding that 85% of doctor visits are stress induced. And when things are stress induced, it's more likely to be a neuroplastic pain and not a structural issue. But we've been taught to be afraid of our diagnoses and our MRIs and things like that. But if you think about the body, if you have a cut, it heals itself, right? Your skin grows back, it makes a little scar. If you have a broken bone, it grows back together. It might not be straight. I would want a doctor to reset it. I'm not saying that, but it will grow back together unless it's completely shattered. Your body knows how to digest food. Your legs know how to walk. Your hands know how to pick up a pen. These are all things that the body does on its own. The body is very magnificent. It's brilliant, and it doesn't need us to tell it what to do. But when we get to the brain, we start questioning things. We start asking questions. We want to know things. We investigate. And a lot of time that fear creates more panic, which in turn creates more pain. And so I've found if we can lower the triggers, change the way we feel stress, and work on the fear specifically, that a lot of times my clients can completely resolve the chronic pain that they're feeling in their body with with ease.
No, I love that. It sounds very interesting. So I'm definitely going to look at that myself when we finish. Um, so just before we end, etc., if there's anything you haven't discussed, the floor is yours. And then how we end it is usually a final question from me to you for the viewers out there.
Okay. No, I mean, if you're struggling with addiction, anxiety, pain, know that there's a root cause of what's going on. This isn't something that just came up in your body. A lot of times it's unconscious, it's old memories, things are triggered. You're not alone. There's lots of people out here that have overcome this and have suffered with this. And so find support with someone who has changed the way that they're doing life and see the potential and possibility out there, because otherwise you don't know it's available. And so I would just encourage anyone that is struggling to connect, to get some support, and let me know if I can help you or guide you in any way. You know, like I said, whether it's just with resources or actually doing some sessions, that's always available. I also have a wellness week that's about to happen in June, the 19th through the 23rd here in the States. It's online. It's completely free to everyone out in the world. And so if anybody wants to join that, I would open that as well and just grab the link from me. And I can share that on my website. I think you'll have the link for that.
No, thank you. And yeah, what I'll do, I'll attach all the links and the links to that what's coming up onto the comments, and I'll keep reposting this video anyway, because obviously I want people to know your story, not just for now live, but down the line it might actually help someone. They usually do. Before we end, my question to you would be: what would you say to someone out there who's struggling, going through trauma, abuse, addiction, and they're too scared to talk? What would your answer be?
Yeah. I would say we don't know what we don't know until we know. And we're not going to get any change in our life if we don't do something different. And so I know it's scary. I remember being there. It's very valid that it's scary. It's valid that it's embarrassing or painful. Um, but if you truly want out, if you truly want to change something, there are people out there, just like we talked about earlier, that do not have judgment, that have compassion and understanding, and have resources and tools to help you. And so if anything resonates when you hear somebody talk, we do this because we want to know that we want you to know that there's help out there. We want you to hear that we've been there and we've overcome it. So connect with people who have already done it, who are offering help, who are willing and able to share information with you. And just trust yourself to do something different. I know that's hard a lot of times when you're in that detriment and that hard space to believe that you could have a different life or change. I never imagined my life would be what it is right now from where I came from. I grew up in Louisiana in a very oppressed area and very poor. And I had no idea that I could live the way that I live right now. And the freedom that I've found in my physical body and my life and my relationships has been mind blowing at this point. So it's available.
No, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Monique. Just before we end, I just want to address the viewers and the safe space between us. Safe space between us has two new members, Patricia and Nicola, who are part of the team now. So they're part of the admin team behind the scenes. And also, anyone needs emergency help, there's emergency contact details on the link pinned on our Facebook page. And again, please feel free to contact us anytime. But I want to thank you sincerely, Monique, for coming on today and giving your time to tell us your story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
No, anytime. Thank you for watching all. This has been a safe space between us. I've been your host, Kieran, and that's been Monique. Take care.